Hey guys, thanks for being here today. Hope y'all are having a good day. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to discuss topic 1.2, the developments in Dar al-Islam between 1200 and 1450. Let me hide my little dealy whopper here. And we're going to specifically look at the end of the Abbasid Caliphate and how that came to an end, what brought about the end of the golden age of Islam, and also what replaced it, what political entities emerged in its power vacuum. So, first of all, a little context here. By the late Abbasid period, you need to know that Dar al-Islam had spread all over Afro-Eurasia, right? So, Muslim rule was no longer really a Arab phenomenon. There were Muslim Kurds, Persians, Turks, Mongols in the Ilkhanate, as you read about. Mongols had been converting to Islam, Afghanis. So, all of these different groups of people were converting and adopting and adapting to Islamic culture and Islamic rule throughout the world. As far away as even Malaysia, there were Islamic and Indonesia Islamic converts, right? And so a lot of the rulers saw an advantage to converting to Islam, as you explored with the Delhi Sultanates. That brought them into networks of trade and allowed for connections with different merchant communities. And allowed for their power to grow and their wealth to grow as well. So it's important to know that even though the Abbasids are kind of on the decline by let's say the 11th, 12th centuries, Islam had spread so far and so wide, and it was so egalitarian and so universal that really it didn't really matter that the Abbasids were no longer going to be the big kid on the block, right? So Islam itself is flourishing, it's thriving, but the Abbasids are kind of beginning to fragment, and new Islamic political entities will be emerging, as we shall see today. So we are going to focus first on why did it decline? What happened in the mid-13th century that brought about an end to the Abbasids? In the 11 and 1200s, it says they start to begin to suffer some of the same problems that a lot of large empires suffer, which is invasion by outside rival groups, outside pressures and states. And the Abbasids were not unique in that instance, right? And so who is most famous for, of course, bringing about an end to the Abbasid rule? And that would, of course, be the Mongols. When the Mongols invade and conquer Baghdad, they lay siege to Baghdad in 1258, overthrow the caliph, infamously bring him out into the town square, behead him, and install a new Khan over to rule over that very rich province, that very strategic area of land, and that region of Mongol rule, the state that they name it after is called the Ilkhanate. And so that really is kind of the formal ending of the Abbasid, the reign in the Middle East is about the mid-13th century. So what happens as a result of that?
Currently in athletic classes, report to the cafe.
All right.
Students currently in fine art classes, report to the auditorium.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harris. I am recording this lecture, and class is coming to an end for some kids. Sorry about that. Okay, so mid-13th century is when the Abbasids are overthrown. What replaces them and what new political entities emerge is what we're going to look at now. All right, so it is important to kind of think back to the AP exam. They do have the course description does specifically reference what new peoples and what new states emerge to replace the Abbasid Caliphate. If you recall back a few weeks ago when you were reading about topic 1.2, developments in the Dar al-Islam, you remember reading about these new political entities called, the Mamluks, the Seljuks, and the Delhi Sultanates, right? And so these are the things that would show up on an exam. This is the causes and the effects of the rise of new Islamic states, and then the development would be as the Abbasid Caliphate fragmented because they had grown too large. Their caliphs had become corrupted. New armies and new provinces and regional powers took more power away from the central government. Those are the reasons why it fragmented. And then what new peoples emerge? It says down here, new political entities emerge dominated by Turks. And that's what we're going to look at today. We've already kind of looked at India and the spread of Islam to India through the Delhi Sultanates for that 3 centuries. Today, we're mostly going to focus on the Seljuk Turks and the Mamluks.
Power of the Abbasids began to wane right before the beginning of our period. This is the important part. Listen, several new Islamic empires began to rise in its place. And here's the spicy part. Those new Islamic empires were largely made up of Turkic peoples, not Arab people. Why are you not falling out of your seat right now? It's a huge development. Look, from the time of Muhammad to the fall of the Abbasid Caliphate, Islamic empires were run by Arabs. But not now. The Turkic Muslims start coming in and setting up new rival empires out of the crumbling edifice of the Abbasid Empire, and let me tell you about 3 of them. First was the Seljuk Empire, which was established in the 11th century in Central Asia. Now, the Seljuks were a pastoral people from Central Asia who were brought in, irony of ironies, by the Abbasids as a professional military force, both to expand their empire and to culturally integrate their empire by force. But by the 1200s, those Seljuk warriors began to claim more and more power for themselves. And in the end, the Abbasid caliphs were still in power and claimed to speak for all of Islam, but the Seljuks had most of the political power because, you know, when you're really good at killing large swaths of people, it's relatively easy to gain power. Okay, second was the Mamluk Sultanate over in Egypt, and it's kind of the same story over here. Now, prior to the Mamluk takeover, the Ayyubid Sultanate ruled Egypt under the leadership of Saladin, otherwise known as he of the pointy turban. I'm kidding, don't write that down. Anyway, in order to advance the goals of his state, Saladin needed more laborers. So what did he do? Well, Saladin went ahead and enslaved a group of fierce Turkic warriors who were known as Mamluks, which just means enslaved person. So Saladin dies, and the sultans who followed him were pretty incompetent, and so what happened? Well, the Turkic Mamluks went ahead and seized power, giving rise to yet another Turkic Muslim state. So what's the lesson here? Well, if you're ruling over a Muslim empire in the post-classical period and want to stay in power, don't bring in the Turkic warriors because eventually they're going to take all your crap over. See? Who said that world history wasn't practical to your life? Anyway, the third Turkic Muslim state to arise during this period was the Delhi Sultanate over here in South Asia. Now, here the invading Turks established a Muslim state in the north and ruled over the Indian population for about 300 years. Now, they had all kinds of problems as well, but we're going to save that for the next video. But the main point here is that as Arab Muslim empires like the Abbasid declined, new Muslim empires made up of Turkic peoples were on the rise. That was a big change. However, these new Muslim states also resembled the former Arab empires in several ways. For example, in these new states, it was mostly the military which was in charge of administration. Additionally, they retained the Islamic practice of implementing Sharia law, which was a code of laws established in the Quran. Okay, now during this period, Islam continued to expand in places all across Afro-Eurasia, and that spread was carried out in basically 3 ways. First, military expansion, and we already saw how that worked with the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate. Second, Islam expanded through merchant activity, which is to say trade. For example, much of North Africa was ruled by Muslims, and that reality stimulated trade and movement of merchants throughout Africa. Further south, the Empire of Mali gradually converted to Islam for many reasons, but chief among them was the increased access to trade among Dar al-Islam. And then third, Islam expanded due to the efforts of Muslim missionaries, a large branch of which was known as the Sufis. Now, during this period, Sufism was a new and emerging form of Islam that emphasized mystical experience. Furthermore, it emphasized that those spiritual experiences were available to anyone regardless of class or gender. And although the Islamic scholar class poo-pooed this innovation, what with its lack of theological rigor, it became a significant force for the spread of Islam across the world.